Hello and welcome to the Usage Report at fantasyfootballcafe.com. I'm your host, Josh Shepardson, and you can follow me on Twitter where I post is at BChad50. And while Week 5 had a number of playing time situations in the backfield and receiving situations that remain pretty much steady to what they've been this year, a handful, 10 in particular, stood out to me as noteworthy to discuss this week. And so let's jump right into that and look at the Arizona Cardinals' suddenly crowded backfield. Andre Ellington rejoined the fold this week, and the Cardinals blew the doors off of the Detroit Lions. And while I usually don't like to look at playing time in blowouts because it can be a bit misleading, there were some interesting nuggets that are worth exploring in this game. Chris Johnson played 17 snaps, carried the ball 11 times, and rushed for 103 yards. He looks like the feature back. He is going to continue to get touches as Bruce Arians promised. Andre Ellington played 15 snaps, broke off one explosive run, total 63 yards on 3 carries in all, and found the end zone. He does look like the change of pace back. He did look explosive and fast as ever, basically. But the real reason that I wanted to highlight this backfield is David Johnson scored 2 rushing touchdowns. And before you dismiss that as a product of the game being a blowout and the rookie just getting playing time, the first score actually pushed the Cardinals' lead, got them in the lead for the first time. They were knotted up with the Lions at 7s apiece. Johnson rushed from inside the 5-yard line for a touchdown. The next score actually came as the next score for the Cardinals. It was the 3rd touchdown of the game for the Cardinals, and the game was not in hand at that point, and yet another goal line vulture carry for David Johnson. Now, that's interesting because it certainly clouds the backfield situation for the Cardinals. Chris Johnson looks like a pretty safe flex play every week, and probably an RB2 most weeks with the way the backfield situations are shaking up around the league. A lot of committees and a lot of feature backs that just aren't performing up to the standards that we expected. But he's obviously not going to get the goal line work. Andre Ellington's going to get some touches in the passing game and get some change of pace carries as well. PPR leagues, I like Ellington a bit as a flex option, but I just don't see a heck of a lot of a ceiling beyond that with Johnson playing well, Chris Johnson playing well, and David Johnson presumably taking over the goal line vulture duties. It's kind of a mess. David Johnson is the back that I'm least interested in standard scoring leagues and non-archaic leagues. I mean, if you're in a touchdown heavy league where you just don't get many points for yardage or receptions, they are basically a dying breed. David Johnson obviously has value in those, but your standard leagues and your yardage bonus leagues and things of that nature, David Johnson isn't a player that I have a ton of faith in going forward. Worth a bench spot if you have deep benches in 12-team leagues or more, just because any back that has touchdown potential or could move into a more prominent role with an injury in front of him does have some value. But this situation is a bit of a mess, and with the way that the Cardinals are playing as good as they are, Bruce Arians has no reason to shake things up. He should continue to split the backfield touches up in a fashion that he has, basically. So Chris Johnson looks like the most desirable back to own, but do note that David Johnson looks like he's going to be a goal line vulture at this point. Next up is the Cincinnati Bengals backfield, and I do hope that you cashed out on Jeremy Hill after his multi-touchdown effort last week, because if you didn't, he turned in another clunker again. 8 carries for 13 yards, was thoroughly outperformed by Giovanni Bernard, who carried the ball 15 times for 80 yards, and is still the superior pass-catching back. 8 targets, 5 receptions. Game flow is always going to keep Bernard in it anytime the Bengals are playing catch-up, and they were against the Seahawks. And with the way that he's running the ball compared to Jeremy Hill, it's not just going to be catch-up time for Bernard getting on the field. He's been the much better back. Jeremy Hill's quickly turning into a goal line vulture, touchdown or bust back, and that's not good. At this point, you're stuck holding on to him for the foreseeable future, and most likely, even if he has another multi-touchdown game, unless there's an injury to Giovanni Bernard, it's going to be a little bit tougher to sell him after another clunker. So you might need him to put together a couple of good games before you're able to sell him for anything. So hopefully you cashed out. If you didn't, that's tough luck. But Giovanni Bernard's stock is way up. He's, at this point, I would say firmly in the RB2 starting spot for all league types. He's not just a pass catching back at this point. He's turned into a good runner despite the presence of Jeremy Hill. So go ahead and comfortably slot Bernard in your RB2 spots and knock it on the door of RB1 in full point per reception leagues, just because he does have that well-rounded skill set where he's going to pick up some yards on the ground, going to get his receptions, going to pick up some receiving yards. Next up is the Green Bay Packers backfield, and this isn't being highlighted to scare any owners into thinking that James Starks is going to take the job from Eddie Lacy, but it is worth pointing out that Lacy just has not lived up to his first-round pick billing so far. He's lucked out because guys like Jeremy Hill, C.J. Anderson haven't performed well. We'll be getting to another first-round back who unfortunately is lost for the season, and guys like Des Bryant are missing significant time. So Lacy's kind of fallen under the radar in terms of scrutiny, but just 27 yards this week rushing. He's yet to break the 100-yard rushing mark. He's only gone over 80 yards twice this season rushing the ball. He has one touchdown to show for his efforts this year. Not much of a factor in the passing game either. And James Starks played 27 snaps to Lacy's 38 this week. Did carry the ball just less than half as many times as Lacy, but Starks got some playing time early in the game before the game turned into a 2-score lead for the Packers. So Lacy obviously is still an RB1 just because of the volume of work he should get most weeks, but his stock is definitely down. And looking ahead at the schedule, favorable matchup this week against the Chargers. The Packers are 10-point favorites. He's going to have a chance to probably salt away a sizable lead if the odds makers are correct. Being attached to an Aaron Rodgers, a lot of offense is always going to leave point scoring potential in play for him because, I mean, Rodgers can march the ball up and down the field. You get within scoring range. Yes, Rodgers is going to take some of these short touchdown runs away from Lacy because the team does trust him around the goal line, but it's also going to be at the goal line and put Lacy in some favorable scoring positions. So certainly not saying to do anything rash like just dump him for nothing. But looking at the schedule, the Chargers matchup looks good. But after that, he's got a bye. And then he faces the Denver Broncos in Denver. And he faces the Carolina Panthers at Carolina. And those are two really stout run defenses, two of the better defenses in the league. So going to be some tough sledding here. If Lacy turns in a very good performance like I expect him to against the Chargers, given the nature of running back and the need for owners to roster them and not a lot of talent out there, might be able to sell Lacy and cash out before his bye week and before he has some tough matchups. Probably obviously not going to get the value that of a top 5 pick or something of that nature, but forward-thinking owners might want to look ahead at that schedule and see what they can get for Lacy after this week. Next up is the Kansas City Chiefs backfield situation, and as I alluded to, there was a feature back, a first-round back that went down for the season this week, and that was Jamal Charles. Non-contact injury, tore his ACL and is out for the season. And heading into the season, Niall Davis was the guy that everybody assumed would be the handcuff, but Charkandrick West has passed him on the depth chart. He played 18 snaps. Davis is 4 this week. Carried the ball 7 times. Davis is 2 carries. Was the more effective back. The Abilene Christian product is built big enough to be a feature back, but it does look like they probably are going to get Davis some touches as well. Charkandrick West has gotten the more favorable reports from Andy Reid, who comped him to Charles, saying that he does more things similar to Charles than Davis does. But both backs are worth grabbing. West is the back that you should be placing a higher priority on, spending more fab dollars on. If you have the number 1 waiver claim or a top 3 waiver claim, West is the back to grab. If you're at the back of the line, it's still worth sticking in a claim on Davis. He does have a 100-plus yard effort as a starter for them. He's only made 2 starts in his career. One came last year when he ran for 132 yards against the Dolphins. He did back that with another 100-plus yard effort, complementing Jamal Charles in a beatdown of the Patriots last year. And in his rookie season, he did get a start in the very last game of the year. Carried the ball 27 times for 81 yards, which is a paltry 3 yards per carry, but he did find pay dirt 2 times. So Davis has proven at least effective in this offense when given a chance to start, when he's filled in for Jamal Charles. So he is worth a grab. West is ahead of him in the pecking order, so obviously you want the guy who's going to get the opportunity first, but don't write off the possibility of Davis turning this either into a committee situation or possibly bypassing West as well. Next up is the Philadelphia Eagles backfield, and I'm highlighting this primarily because of Chip Kelly's press conference where he basically said that they view all of the backs similarly, that Ryan Matthews is, paraphrasing, that Ryan Matthews is basically the same type of back as DeMarco Murray is, and Deuce Staley, the running backs coach, is in charge of shuffling these guys in and out. It seemed like there was a bit of a, I don't want to say a meltdown, but a reaction from the fantasy community. And the fact is, DeMarco Murray is still the feature back. This week, he played 44 snaps to Matthews' 21. Darren Sproles, their pass-catching change-of-pace back, was on the field for 26. Murray carried the ball 20 times to Matthews' 8. He outrushed him 83 yards to 73 yards. Matthews was, from a yards per carry perspective, the more effective back, but Murray also added a lot in the passing game. He's targeted 8 times and caught 7 balls. So Murray is the feature back. He did talk about wanting to get the ball more. They did accommodate him in a blowout win against the Saints this week. And you have to figure Murray's going to continue to be the feature back there. He's the back that you want to own the most. Sproles is worth owning in PPR leagues as he does clearly have a role in this offense as well. And Matthews, I will say in 12-team leagues or larger, he is worth rostering, but he's not startable. He's not really pressing Murray for the job. But if Murray misses time, something he has done in his college career and professional career, Matthews immediately looks like a strong RB2 in the event that Murray misses any games. And he filled in admirably for him already once this year, and that kind of sets the tone for what type of back he can be when given a feature back's workload. Moving on to the wide receiver and tight end situations, we'll look at Atlanta again. It seems like we're checking in there every week. Reason I check in there this week is because Roddy White has reportedly drawn some trade interest, and given the fact that he's complaining about his role in the offense, how he wants to catch passes, he hasn't been effective even this week. 4 targets, 2 receptions, just 23 passing yards or receiving yards. Yes, the Falcons are undefeated at this point, but I think they'd be crazy not to at least listen to offers for Roddy White. Trade rumors don't always or even often turn into actual deals happening, but it's worth noting that he is drawing interest. Julio Jones, less than 100%, has already said that he's not sure if he will play on Thursday. He hopes to play, but it sounds like a day-to-day situation. The guy that I continue to beat the drum for rostering is Leonard Hankerson. He stunk this week against his former team. Only played 39 snaps, only received 4 targets, turned his 4 targets into 1 reception for 13 yards, which is certainly far less than we expected. I expected, and many fantasy pundits expected, against an injury-depleted Redskins squad. But Matty Ice just wasn't himself this week and turned in a poor performance himself. So I'm going to say give Hankerson a pass. Note that maybe Roddy White could be out the door. Hankerson's been the more effective number 2 receiver anyway. And should Jones miss time, Hankerson's looks could go up in that situation. But he's also not a bad guy to have opposite Julio Jones, since he can stretch the field. And if he's getting single coverage, going to have the possibility to break off big plays on a weekly basis. Next up is the Houston Texans. And you don't need me to tell you DeAndre Hopkins is a stud. That is firmly established at this point. There is no argument against that. But the absence of Cecil Shorts and Nate Washington this week paved the way to some playing time for some other receivers that normally wouldn't get regular snaps. And saw Jalen Strong play for the first time this week. The club's 3rd-round pick made his receptions debut on a Hail Mary to end the first half. Now, it was probably the least contested Hail Mary pass I've ever seen in my football watching experience. It was remarkable that he got so open and had so little, had to make such a little effort to reel in the pass. But he also caught another touchdown pass later in the game, and big body, 6'3", good size, well over 200 pounds, and was very productive at Arizona State. I think that he has some growth potential as the season goes on. And while Cecil Shorts is reportedly recovering ahead of schedule and could be back here fairly soon, there's not exactly a timetable on him. Nate Washington, it does seem like he's going to miss a bit of time. And Even though Jalen Strong played the third most snaps at wide receiver, he is the most intriguing. He does have the most upside behind DeAndre Hopkins as a big guy who can be a red zone threat. He's certainly not startable just yet, but I think if you're in a 12-team league or larger and have some bench spots to work with or a bench spot to work with, Jalen Strong is a worthwhile grab because the upside is there for him to emerge down the stretch as he continues to get acclimated to the NFL, to the professional level after dominating at the college level for his 2 years with Arizona State. So I like his stock. I think it's on the way up. I think he's a guy that has some potential here down the stretch and when it really matters come fantasy playoff time. Next up is the New Orleans Saints, and got to apologize to Willie Snead. I sold him short. I'm big on measurables, and Snead just isn't the fastest guy. He's not the biggest guy, but he is the apple of Drew Brees' eye, and that's really what matters at this point. He's emerged as the top pass catcher there, and Brandon Cooks was the one that got all the hype, understandably, coming into the season. But Cooks turned in really his first fantasy-worthy performance of the year with 5 receptions for 107 yards and a touchdown. That touchdown came in garbage time, and granted, Willie Snead did pick up some big yardage in garbage time as well, but 6 receptions for 141 yards, and he led the team in targets, receptions, and receiving yards again this week. There's no question that he is the top wide receiver to own in New Orleans. He's a flex starter going forward in all league types until or unless Drew Brees starts to spread the ball around more. But it looks like Snead is the guy that he trusts and is going to get the football to. The next playing time situation we're going to look at, or usage situation that I should say we're going to look at, is in San Diego. Antonio Gates returned, hit the ground running a lot faster than I expected, wasted no time catching his 100th career touchdown pass, first touchdown of the game, caught a second touchdown pass, was the most targeted pass catcher for the Chargers, led the team in receptions, receiving yards, and had those 2 touchdown grabs. Definitely going to cut into Keenan Allen's looks and production, but I'd still say that Keenan Allen is firmly planted in the strong wide receiver 2 territory. The Chargers just aren't running the ball a heck of a lot. They ran the ball less than 20 times again in what was a close contest against the Steelers, so it wasn't a matter of game script changing because they were playing catch-up. Keenan Allen's going to get a lot of targets, going to get his, but Antonio Gates immediately a fantasy starter at tight end and could be a top 5 option going forward. Stevie Johnson missed this contest. It's going to be interesting to see how the snaps play out, namely for Ladarius Green once Stevie Johnson gets back. Malcolm Floyd, Dontrell Inman, not really fantasy relevant receivers at this point. Floyd used to be a big play threat, but he's so far down the pecking order at this point, not really worth rostering in many leagues. But Ladarius Green actually played more snaps than Antonio Gates, and he had a fairly productive night, 5 receptions on 5 targets for 50 yards. If Stevie Johnson's return doesn't prevent them from running some two tight end sets, Green might have some occasional spot start appeal if you want to chase touchdowns. Basically, he is a big target, and he is a speedy target in a matchup nightmare, but obviously behind Gates in the pecking order, obviously not a starting tight end most weeks. And really beyond Allen and Gates, you don't have any clear-cut starters on that offense in the passing game or running game. Danny Woodhead is a solid flex option in PPR formats, but in standard leagues, not a big yardage guy, not a big touchdown guy. Melvin Gordon, disappointing so far. I was pumping him up a few weeks ago, but they just really haven't turned him loose at all. And the final situation we're going to look at is in Washington. And another guy that I don't want to say I sold short, but he did perform a little bit better than I expected this week, and that's Jamison Crowder. Crowder led the Redskins in targets, receptions, and receiving yards with 8 targets, all of which he hauled in for 87 yards. The yards per reception kind of speak to the fact that he is limited on upside. He's a smaller receiver, as I noted last week and noted again this week in the article. And but he is an effective slot receiver, has some flex appeal in PPR leagues as we navigate through the bye weeks. Doesn't have a high ceiling, but he's not going to kill you if you're stuck plugging him in PPR leagues. The fact that he is limited from a touchdown upside perspective and a yardage upside perspective does hurt his stock in standard scoring leagues, where he's really basically worth a bench spot in larger leagues as we get through the bye weeks, but more of a PPR target. And Pierre Garcon remains the #1 receiver there, the most fantasy relevant, but without others to take some of the stress off of him, going to be tough for him to get behind defenses. Only had 3 grabs for 51 yards despite being targeted 8 times this week. So Garcon definitely the best receiver there until Deshaun Jackson gets back. But this is a situation that really there aren't any high ceiling guys that you get excited about rostering. And part of that is also the fact that Kirk Cousins is the man under center. So with that, that's going to wrap things up. Check out all of our awesome content, including the podcast and the articles at the site. And don't be a stranger. Hop on the forums. We're all active there. Very talkative fantasy community that's always interested in discussing strategy. If you've got a question about trades, possible waiver claims, that's the place to be. Hop on there, get some great insights from some knowledgeable people. And until next week, good luck this week, and go out there and make some waiver claims.